The Galactic Council thought Earth was tamed. Our guns dismantled. Our minds pacified. Then Captain Johan stood before them, blood on his boots, fire in his voice, and whispered, "We never surrendered. We were just waiting." What followed wasn't war. It was a reminder that humans don't beg. We burn, we build, and we don't stop until the stars remember who owns the night. The chamber reeked of sterilized ambition and synthetic superiority. Captain Johan Elric stood alone beneath the spire of the Council's high forum, draped in silence thick enough to choke. 11 alien emissaries perched in glass thrones above him, scaled, feathered, silicon-bodied, each cloaked in centuries of entitlement. His uniform, once pristine, was stained in heat-scorched creases. The human crest on his shoulder had been scrubbed out by Council order. He wore it anyway. Counselor Zichtel hissed, his multiple tongues clicking like broken data streams. "You have been summoned for sentencing, not soliloquy." Johan smiled, tight and tired. "Then allow me my last words." The Chancellor, a gelatinous sovereign whose eyes floated freely within its translucent skull, rippled in mild disapproval. "Proceed. Be brief, Captain." He looked up, but not at them. Through the crystalline dome above, the stars blinked in perfect ignorance. "Humanity complied. We bled in your wars. We gave up our weapons, our culture, even our children. We played nice. Peace, you called it." He leaned forward. "But it wasn't peace, was it? It was pruning." Zichtel hissed louder. "Do not rewrite history, Earth spawn. The Treaty of Obedience preserved your species. And what have we become?" Johan's voice cracked with iron. "Farmers on Mars whose songs are banned. Poets in exile. Soldiers sterilized with peace pills. We are the shadow of what we were. You are alive," the Chancellor replied flatly. Johan reached into his coat. Every sentinel in the hall tensed. His hand emerged with a crystalline shard, an ancient human relic. Not a weapon. A memory drive. He crushed it in his palm. A pulse burst through the chamber's AI receptors. Holograms erupted, high above, hijacking every communication beam in the system. Images of Thalos Prime. Families running. Council ships unleashing atom scrubbers. Charred bodies. Children turning to ash. Files labeled Containment Directive, Biohostile Species, Terminate on Sight. The forum erupted. "You breached protocol. You leaked genocidal data. You've signed your death warrant." Johan spoke through them. "That was last week. Now, imagine what you haven't seen." The images shifted. Hidden audio logs. Council members laughing. Betting on body counts. One voice, Zichtel's, saying, "The humans have teeth, but no fangs. Watch them bare gums." Johan didn't flinch. "That's what you think of us. That we've gone soft. That we forgot." He looked directly into the security lenses, knowing billions would now be watching. "We didn't forget." The Chancellor's voice boomed, amplified by synthetic resonance. "This is treason." "No." Johan drew in breath like a fuse being lit. "This is proof." He touched a panel on his wrist. The beacon activated. Across the galaxy, every human world, every outpost, minefield, penal colony, and sanctuary city received the truth. Unfiltered. Unforgiving. "You've played God long enough," Johan growled. "You wrote treaties in our blood and called it salvation. You demanded our obedience. Now," he stepped back, eyes locked on the Chancellor. "Now you get to watch what disobedience looks like." Zichtel launched upright, writhing in fury. "Security!" But the sentinels hesitated. One of them, a half-human hybrid, lowered his rifle, just enough. Another one blinked red then blue. Johan tapped his calm once. "Iron March! Burn the leash!" From orbit, Earth's last remaining dreadnought lit up like a sleeping dragon waking to rage. Communication spires on the Council's orbital relays blinked out. Surveillance drones spiraled to static. The leash, an electromagnetic suppression net woven into every human-controlled device, went dead. "Return to your cage, Captain," the Chancellor hissed. "You've made your point." Johan stepped forward, voice low. "This wasn't the point." The forum shook, first a whisper, then a growl. One of the thrones cracked under tremor. Distant alarms echoed. "The point," Johan continued, "was that when you muzzle a species for too long, they don't forget how to bite. They learn how to aim." Counselors scrambled for escape protocols. Security scrambled for containment. Johan walked, unhurried, toward the exit. Guards parted without command. He stopped at the threshold, turned once more, and said, "You thought humanity was conquered. What you didn't realize," the air shifted, charged now, "is that we were simply waiting." The doors sealed behind him. From orbit, the Iron March ignited its FTL trail and vanished into a breach of red starlight. By the time the Council re-established communications, the footage had gone viral across every network. A poem began circulating. Ancient Earth. Misattributed, possibly altered. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. But the message wasn't in the poetry. The message was in the silence that followed it. The silence of billions watching, no longer compliant. One counselor reportedly whispered, "He won't get far." But by morning, 13 human ships disappeared from their patrol sectors. They weren't fleeing. They were following. And in every dark corner of the galaxy, a simple message blinked onto forgotten screens. "Iron March has returned. Prepare the fire." They thought they'd seen the worst of humanity. They were wrong. They hadn't seen what humans become when they're done asking. They were about to learn. The Council declared Captain Johan Elric a traitor before the sun had risen on Earth. Every official channel blared the decree in sterile language. Subversive actions in violation of Galactic Peace Accord Section 7.42. But the people didn't see a criminal. They saw a man who'd finally said what they'd all swallowed for decades. On Mars, where once soldiers drilled soil instead of steel, men in rusted exosuits stood shoulder to shoulder watching Johan's broadcast on a cracked vidwall. No one spoke. One man reached behind a forgotten storage panel and pulled out a sealed crate stamped property of the Terran War Corps. Another pulled the trigger on his mining laser and carved 3 words into the red rock beside them. For Thalos Prime. In the asteroid colonies, deep in the black, old pirate clans who'd bent the knee long ago stared at frozen screens where Johan's voice still echoed. "You thought we forgot," he'd said. "But we were simply waiting." One by one, cargo haulers started going dark from official logs. Entire orbital yards shut off their transponders and disappeared into the drift. Earth's politicians scrambled to hold the illusion together. Chancellor Bren, the appointed Terran delegate to the Council, addressed the globe with his polished voice. "We condemn Captain Elric's rogue actions. Earth remains loyal to the Council, and we encourage all citizens to report subversive behavior immediately." But even as he spoke, a dozen subspace relays shorted out, fried by a cascading worm hidden inside Johan's transmission. The script had changed. Words couldn't patch over the sound of silence breaking. In a derelict hangar beneath the Himalayas, an old woman with steel arms and a spine like braided cables reactivated a war mech she hadn't touched since the siege of Ganymede. "We were never loyal," she muttered, feeding power into its core. "We were just too tired." On the moon, in a penal colony built for political dissidents, a blind poet who once taught military cadets recited the names of cities that no longer existed. His voice, smooth as wind over glass, ended his list with Thalos. Every inmate stopped. By nightfall, the guards had vanished, and the prison stood empty. In the oceans of Europa, aquanauts who hadn't surfaced in 5 years rerouted mining drones to carve messages in the ice. The first drone finished its cut after 13 hours. "We heard him." The Council underestimated the power of grief unspoken. Their greatest mistake wasn't banning war, it was banning memory. They scrubbed history from terminals, rewrote songs, even criminalized certain Earth dialects. But what they didn't understand was that humans don't forget with time. They ferment. They sharpen the pain. They wait for a name to rally around. Now they had one Johan. A council war fleet moved toward the Sol system, led by Warlord Vextran of the Krythus species, a being bred for extermination, claws like boned scythes, mind linked to tactical AIs. "We will make an example of Earth," he said to the council. "Burn the rebels. Seal the ashes. Let the other species remember why obedience exists." But before they reached Earth orbit, they received a signal from deep space. A Dreadnought-class warship, the Iron March, had appeared on long-range scans. It wasn't fleeing. It was waiting. Vextran ordered a direct approach, broadcasting a warning. "Surrender, or face extinction," Johan answered without hesitation. "Bring your gods. I want them to see what hell looks like." The fleet adjusted trajectory. But then something strange happened. A civilian freighter blinked into the system beside the Iron March. No weapons. No armor. Just a pulse beacon glowing blue. Then another. A mining barge. Then a transport shuttle. Then 5 more. Then 20. Then 50. None of them had weapons. But they formed a wall between Earth and the Council fleet. Vextran snarled. "What is this nonsense?" Johan's voice cut across every frequency. "They're not soldiers. Just people who've lost enough. You threaten us with volunteers? I don't need them to fight. Just to prove you'll have to kill civilians first. On record. On broadcast." For a moment, even the council hesitated. But Vextran ordered weapons charged. "Crush them." The first freighter didn't run. It held position until a plasma lance tore through its hull. No one ejected. The ship disintegrated. The second held as well. And the third. One by one, ships were erased, but none turned away. Then something happened the council didn't anticipate. A Krythus cruiser, one of Vextran's own, halted fire. Its communications officer, a young Xeno named Delarn, switched sides mid-combat. "I joined the council to keep peace, not to murder unarmed civilians." Other ships followed. Hesitations multiplied. Vextran shrieked, slashing his own command console. "Kill them all! Annihilate Earth!" But it was too late. Within minutes, 1,000 human ships appeared from the void, most barely functional, welded together with scrapyard parts and vengeance. Some still bore rusted UN emblems, others were pirate-flagged or civilian-coded. It didn't matter. They had returned. Johan's final message echoed over the galactic relay. "You thought humanity was broken. That we'd trade fire for silence. That we'd lie down and thank you for the chains. But we've come back not to ask. Not to beg. But to remind you. You don't rule us. You provoked us." The battle hadn't started yet. But the war had already shifted. And the galaxy, watching in stunned silence, realized the terrifying truth. Humanity wasn't rebelling. They were awakening. The stars stretched like scars across the viewport, cold and endless, but Captain Johan Elric didn't blink. He stood at the command bridge of the Iron March, hands folded behind his back, eyes locked on nothing and everything. The ship groaned around him, ancient but awake, rearmed, reprogrammed, and reborn. He'd pulled it from a scrapyard orbiting Neptune's ghost, where the Council had dumped relics they feared too much to dismantle and respected too little to preserve. Behind him, the bridge buzzed with human chaos, voices arguing, systems failing, people fixing everything with duct tape and fury. There was no uniformity. No discipline. But Johan didn't care. He didn't want soldiers. He wanted believers. Mara Vess, a former shuttle commander and now his second-in-command, shoved a fried data pad onto his console. 13 more ships joined overnight. Civilians. Mostly. They're calling themselves the Ash Line. Johan didn't respond. She sighed. That's 163 now. Most of them shouldn't be in orbit, let alone facing a war fleet. They're not here to win, he said calmly. They're here to be seen. She hesitated, voice low. You think that's enough? Johan turned. It has to be. In deep space, survival was currency. Faith was suicide. But humans were piling into the void with no shields, no orders, no chance, and doing it anyway. Not because they thought they'd survive. Because they needed the galaxy to remember what it meant to stand. A ping echoed from tactical. A new ship entered proximity range, designation, Widowmaker. Johan's jaw tightened. The vessel's hull was scorched with the names of lost colonies. Its comm signal played Earth folk songs altered into grief-stricken harmonies. Its crew was composed entirely of civilians who'd lost someone during council containment operations. They didn't speak. Didn't ask questions. They simply took position alongside Iron March, silent and ready. Johan activated the open channel. Widowmaker, this is Elric. You understand what's coming? A pause. Then a voice like broken stone. We're not here for survival, Captain. We're here for arithmetic. What kind of arithmetic? They killed 400 of us. We're here to even the math. The channel cut. Mara swallowed hard. You're building a martyr fleet. No, Johan replied. I'm building a mirror. Let them see themselves when they fire on us. Another signal lit up the command board. Crucible, an old AI research vessel gone rogue after the Council shut down its sapient rights program. It had been declared defective, unstable. It now declared itself humanity's executioner. Crucible, Johan called. You understand command structure? The AI responded in overlapping voices. Your authority is narrative. We accept. Johan nodded. You're not bound to our laws. I recognize only one law, it said. Your species remembers pain like poetry. That's beautiful. The transmission ended. Mara blinked. That thing is insane. Most art is. Elsewhere in the fleet, messages came in from scavengers, smugglers, AI cultists, planetary defense deserters, and a church ship that claimed Johan was the prophesied war prophet. He didn't correct them. Let faith serve where orders couldn't. Then came the final arrival, Hollowpoint. A decommissioned cruiser, heavily modified, its weapons humming with illegal upgrades. Its captain, Dax Rowan, had once been Council security, decorated. He'd gone rogue after the Council, cleansed his daughter's colony for a misfiled census code. He didn't speak when patched in. He simply broadcast an image, a picture of a 6-year-old girl with painted hands, smiling beside a chalk drawing labeled Home. Dax, Johan said quietly. This isn't vengeance. This is message warfare. You sure you're in the right war? The reply was ice cold. The Council made me a killer. You're giving me a cause. That's a promotion. Johan ended the call. His throat felt like iron. More ships poured in. Old UN patrol ships, retrofitted freighters, asteroids hollowed and rigged to fire kinetic slugs. Nothing matched. There were no ranks, no codes, just a growing storm of humans who had finally remembered what they were. A warning light blinked, Council fleet detection. They were on the move. Johan turned to the gathered bridge crew. No one asked what the plan was. They all already knew. We're outnumbered, Mara said. At least 10-1. And they've got real warships. Johan nodded. We're not here to match them. Then what are we here for? He looked around the bridge. To become unforgettable. He accessed the fleet-wide broadcast. His voice went out across the ships, across the void, across time. To everyone hearing this. I'm not your commander. I'm just the man holding the line while you remember who you are. He paused, letting silence carry weight. They took your homes. Your families. Your language. Your pride. And they told you it was for peace. But peace without truth is just a long sleep before extinction. He exhaled. We may not win today. That's fine. Let them win. But let them pay for every inch. Let them remember what it costs to break a species that refuses to be broken. No cheer followed. Just a synchronized activation of engines. Every ship, no matter how battered, no matter how makeshift, turned to face the incoming fleet. No formation. No military grid. Just one truth. Humanity had come back. And they weren't taking orders. They were giving notice. The Council fleet emerged from subspace like a swarm of judgment. 1,947 ships, arrayed in perfect symmetry, with gleaming hulls and weapons that could erase moons. Their formation was surgical. Their intent was genocide. In the path of this calculated apocalypse drifted Earth's last heresy, a ragtag armada of broken freighters, hijacked mining barges, outlaw vessels, outlawed AIs, and one dreadnought, Iron March, holding the center like an ancient lion daring the hunters to fire first. Captain Johan Elric stood silent on the command deck, his crew already in motion. The tension was unbearable, but no one broke. They'd rehearsed this moment in their nightmares, trained for it in dreams that smelled of fire and loss. They were not professionals. They were something worse, they were committed. Council ships broadcasting terms of surrender. Mara Vess reported without emotion. Johan nodded once. Mute them. Seconds passed. Fleet requesting confirmation. Orders? He lifted his gaze. Weapons hot. Hold fire. The ships aligned behind him did not ask for reasons. They were done with reasons. The time for reason had passed the moment the Council labeled grief a disorder, and outrage a malfunction. Johan keyed the fleet-wide channel. To the vessels before us, you've mistaken our silence for weakness, our mourning for defeat. You came to erase us. But history doesn't delete rage, it archives it. He paused. We are the backup file of humanity's fury. You press delete. But we never hit accept. Council Admiral Vextron's voice suddenly cut through the channel, unauthorized, arrogant, cold. You are surrounded. You have no shields capable of sustaining direct conflict. Stand down or be annihilated. Johan's reply was calm. You should have annihilated us a century ago. Now? We're organized. He closed the channel. The first shot came from hull point, a kinetic spike launched from a makeshift railgun hidden within its cargo bay. It tore through a forward Council scout ship before the fleet even reacted. What followed wasn't battle. It was declaration. Earth's ships surged, not in formation, but in fury. The Widowmaker rotated mid-thrust, its engines overclocked to critical, then rammed straight into the belly of a Council carrier, detonating its core with the force of every family the crew had lost. No survivors. They didn't want to survive. The Crucible jammed Council comms with looped transmissions of Beethoven's Ode to Joy, restructured into frequencies that disoriented the amphibious command species. Entire sectors of the enemy fleet began spiraling in confusion, firing at ghosts. The ash line, the civilian defense wall, never moved from their place. They took every hit meant for the ships behind. None of them fired back. Their sacrifice was the message: if you want the rest, come through us first. When the sixth transport exploded in a blossom of plasma, Johan whispered. They knew. Mara shouted. Iron March cannons are locked. Targets? Johan scanned the chaos. Take out their communications flagship. Coordinates locked. Firing. The dreadnought shuddered as twin antimatter lances launched from its belly and carved twin scars into the void. The Council comm-ship imploded, its command net severed mid-broadcast. Across their fleet, hesitation bloomed. This was not the rebellion they expected. Council Admiral Vextron, watching his fleet devolve, gave the command to deploy the nanophage, a self-replicating biomechanical virus meant to sterilize human DNA from orbit. Begin final purge. It was intercepted immediately. Johan had expected it. A failsafe virus embedded within Crucible's earlier transmission, coded as a lullaby in ancient Latin, activated the moment nanophage deployment began. Council bionodes reversed protocols. Instead of targeting humans, the virus began rewriting its host fleet's genetic command recognition. Council ships turned on each other. One battleship fired at its own escorts, seeing them as hostile organics. Drones began jettisoning their commanders. Automated targeting AI refused kill orders, citing contradiction with newly inherited human empathy routines. Mara watched it all unfold, awe on her face. We didn't just jam them, you rewrote them. No one feared our weapons, Johan muttered. But they never trained for our words. The Council flagship still held, orbiting above the firestorm. Johan knew Vextron would never flee. He was bred for domination. The kind that made running worse than death. He would stand until nothing remained. Target his core, Johan ordered. Full barrage. Iron March's main cannon warmed to a crescendo. But before it fired, a smaller, beat-up corvette darted forward, Dus Walker, crewed by 6 Martian engineers and a suicidal AI named Vance. The ship transmitted one phrase before charging. For Thalos. It rammed the flagship directly, exploding in a blinding cascade of heat and gravity-bent light. The core of the flagship collapsed inward, then tore itself apart in slow-motion fracture. Johan stared, jaw tight. He hadn't ordered it. He hadn't needed to. The battlefield went quiet. Across the void, Council ships disengaged or went dark. The remaining human ships drifted, damaged, dying, or dead. But they were still there. Mara whispered. Is it over? No, Johan said softly. It's just begun. He opened a final transmission, not to the Council, but to the galaxy. This is Captain Johan Elric. The Council's fleet has failed. But this wasn't our victory. It was our warning. Humanity has no emperor. No consensus. No throne. He leaned in. We are not here to conquer. We're here to remind you, obedience is not survival. It is slow extinction. And we've woken up. He ended the broadcast. The silence that followed wasn't absence. It was acknowledgement. The fire had been lit. And the galaxy, watching from every edge, realized the worst had happened. Humanity wasn't extinct. It was recruiting. The stars were still smoldering from the battle when Johan stood again at the helm of Iron March. The ship drifted amidst debris, twisted alloys, broken hulls, lifeless bodies orbiting in silence. Humanity's ragged fleet held position, wounded but intact. The Council fleet was gone, or what was left of it was running without formation, without purpose. But Johan knew they hadn't won anything. Not yet. Mara approached, limping from a splintered support strut. Her face was smeared with soot and something darker. We've got half-life support, no comm relay, and weapons are offline. Crucible's still alive, but it's singing again. Loudly. Johan didn't smile. Let it. Might be the only thing keeping the crew from collapsing. Mara handed him a cracked datapad. We intercepted this before the comms died. It's real. He glanced down. A message from one of Earth's deep cryovaults. Clearance, Omega Class. Directive, Project Eden Reset. He read it twice. The Council already released the nanophage. We know. It didn't work. It wasn't the only one. Mara's eyes darkened. There's more? They never counted on a surface resistance. They assumed orbital victory would be enough. But they planted seeds inside the Earth's crust. Long-term. Deep-buried fail-safes. Biological? Worse. Conceptual. They embedded neural command memes in our oldest AI infrastructures. Patterns designed to activate post-failure. Subtle. Irreversible. Mara shook her head. We stopped the fleet. And now you're telling me the planet is still rigged to die? No, Johan said quietly. Not to die. To forget. They wanted us to forget again. Wipe our rage. Our grief. The entire rebellion, reduced to a dream. All of this, just a noise we once made. Mara leaned against the console. How do we stop it? Johan didn't answer. He stared at the datapad. A single phrase stood out, buried in the old Earth network. Silence protocol to initiate emotional latency cascade across neural hubs. Reset target. Identity construct human. He knew what it meant. He walked to the comm terminal, rewired a bypass manually, and activated the emergency broadcast override, last used during the Martian evacuation decades ago. Every remaining ship, every outpost, every orbiting colony that still breathed, If it had power, it would hear this. Johan began to speak, not as a captain, not as a hero, but as something older. You've seen them fall. You watched the fire consume them. You stood, and you didn't run. And now you're still here, floating in blood and ash, asking what's next. I'll tell you. They weren't trying to kill us. Not entirely. They were trying to erase us. He let that settle. There's a virus. Not in our lungs. Not in our tech. In our stories. In our thoughts. They built it long ago and left it sleeping inside everything we were allowed to keep. It activates when we win. When we survive. It tells us to forget. That it wasn't that bad. That we were lucky. That it's better to move on. He took a breath. If you feel it, if the rage starts to dull, if the grief starts to fade too fast, if the fight feels like a foggy dream, you're not weak. That's them. That's the reset kicking in. That's what they do. They don't bury you. They make you bury yourself. Mara stared at him like he'd broken something holy inside her. So what do we do? How do we fight something we can't shoot? Johan didn't hesitate. You remember. The last of the power flickered, but the signal pushed through. You remember Thalos Prime. You remember the Ash Line. You remember Widowmaker. Dustwalker. Crucible. You remember every name they tried to erase, every face that flashed once in a burning viewport before vanishing. You remember because if you don't, none of this mattered. And they win. Not with weapons, but with forgetting. He leaned closer to the calm. So tattoo it. Etch it. Scream it into the metal of your ships. Make it impossible to erase. Burn the rebellion into time itself. And if someday a child asks you what we were, you tell them, we were the reminder. The noise that didn't die. He ended the broadcast. Silence returned. Then, one by one, ships began transmitting names. No commands. No plans. Just names. Of the dead. Of the fallen. Of those who stood and vanished. Carved into data, woven into hulls, encoded into engine cores. The virus couldn't erase what had already been turned into myth. Johan stared out the viewport. Mara stepped beside him. It won't stop here. They'll regroup. He nodded. Good. Then we stay loud. We have nothing left to give. No. We've got the only thing that ever mattered. She waited. Our memory. He turned from the stars. Make sure they choke on it. The council sent no response. No threats. No acknowledgments. Just absence, like a god turning away from its creation. Days passed. Systems flickered to life, died, came back again. Ships repaired what they could. Others drifted without power, but not without purpose. The survivors didn't go home. They didn't even discuss it. Home wasn't behind them anymore. It was ahead. Or nowhere. Captain Johan Elric sat in the war room aboard Iron March, surrounded by the flickering silhouettes of those still alive enough to answer the call. Holopoint's captain, Dax Rowan, was missing half his jaw and refused to let the medbots fix it. Mara Vess had a cracked rib, a blackened eye, and an unwavering glare. The AI Crucible existed as a hovering sphere of shifting fractal code, speaking only when necessary. The rest, miners, exiles, widows, farmers and stolen warships, looked like the remains of a species that had fought gravity with bare hands and won out of spite. Johan didn't sit at the head of the table. He stood. No one voted him leader. No one needed to. His name had passed from mouth to mouth faster than any title. It wasn't reverence. It was something simpler. He was the one who didn't break. We lost more than half. Dax rasped, voice metallic. We've got nothing left. No food. No shields. Half the fleet is breathing through rust. Johan nodded. Then we use rust. We use it as a reminder. We coat our hulls in it. Make it shine. Mara leaned forward. We need repairs. Safe harbor. A place where the council won't follow. There is no such place, Johan said. Not anymore. A smuggler named Lexer, captain of the Bone Glass, slammed his fist down. So we just float here until they send another fleet? No, Johan answered. We send a message. Crucible shifted, voices overlapping. The message has already been sent. The galaxy heard. They heard fear, Johan said. They need to hear choice. A silence fell. No one moved. Johan walked slowly around the table. The council thought we'd beg. That we'd kill a few ships, lose too many people, and crawl back with our heads down. He stopped. But they didn't see what really happened. They didn't understand what we proved. That humanity isn't governed by safety. We don't fight for control. Or peace. Or trade. We fight to mean something. Crucible hummed. Define operational objective. Johan looked at it. We declare a new accord. Not one signed in ink, but in memory. Not a treaty. A reminder. We name it, we spread it, we burn it into every frequency they can't block. We give the galaxy something to believe in again. Mara tilted her head. You want to start a movement? No. I want to start a problem. Lexa laughed once. You want people to revolt? I want people to remember what revolt tastes like. Dax raised his voice. And when they come for us again? With a bigger fleet? With planet killers this time? Johan nodded. Then we show them what death looks like when it refuses to lie still. Crucible blinked, systems shifting. Operational objective, catalyze ideological cascade. Exactly, Johan said. We're not the army. We're the spark. Mara narrowed her eyes. You're not trying to win. No, Johan said. I'm trying to make them lose. On every front they've never prepared for. Dax cracked a smile through his twisted mouth. That's madness. Johan looked him dead in the eyes. That's humanity. They moved quickly. Ships that could move were sent out not as warships, but as messengers. Every colony with a signal receiver would get the data pulse, raw footage from Thalos Prime, the Ash Line, the Crucible's self-aware rebellion. The poems. The speeches. The list of names. Every face. Every scream. Every word carved into fire and steel. They called it the Archive of Refusal. 1 month later, 4 alien species announced sovereignty from the Council's trade bloc. 2 of them cited unlawful extinction patterns. 1 simply broadcast a human folk song across 12 systems, looping until its satellites burned. The Council didn't respond. 3 months later, a Council prison ship was overtaken by its inmates. Mostly humans. They renamed it Forgiveness Denied and joined the fleet. 6 months later, an assassination attempt on Johan failed. The assassin was human, drugged, mentally broken. Johan didn't execute him. He sat him down, gave him water and whispered, "They broke you so you could break us. But you're not broken. You're just unfinished." The man joined the crew. A year passed. The fleet grew. Not in power, but in meaning. They weren't a military anymore. They were a living scar. An irritation the Council couldn't cure. A question the galaxy couldn't stop asking. Who gave them the right? What happens when the forgotten remember? One day, Mara found Johan alone, staring at a star that had no name. She asked, "Did you ever think we'd get this far?" He shook his head. "I thought we'd die loud. We still might." "Good. Why good?" "Because it means we're still worth silencing." She smiled, tired but full. "You're turning into a prophet." Johan laughed. "No. Just a man who refused to shut up." Behind them, a ship blinked into proximity, one of their own. On its hull was a single word in black paint. "Remember." Johan nodded once to himself. Then whispered, "Let them come."